let's talk about running back strategy.
Yes, sir.
And the first question is, what does your top tier of running backs look like, and who's the cutoff?
Okay. Sure. So I'm going to put up a full screen right here for those of you watching on Peacock TV or later on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. But for those listening to purely the audio version of it, I have Jonathan Taylor at 1. I have CMC, Christian McCaffrey at 2. Austin Eckler, last year's ride or die, comes in at 3. You all doubted me last year, and you were wrong. Dalvin Cook at 4, Derrick Henry at 5. Cook at 4. Again, I think the Vikings offense takes a huge step. I have Alvin Kamara at running back 6, much higher than the consensus. I do not believe he gets suspended this year. Najee Harris comes in at 7. Doesn't seem to be any concerns about his injury. Aaron Jones at 8. I might swap those two, Harris and Jones. Really close for me. I'm significantly higher than Jones on the overall Yahoo ADP. Joe Mixon is at 9 behind that new rebuilt offensive line. And DeAndre Swift, as we've talked about, behind a very sneakily good offensive line for the Lions, comes in at 10.
Derrick Henry in the middle there between Cook and Kamara as well. There you go.
That is correct. Did I not say Derrick Henry?
Derrick Henry's getting overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, well, Derrick Henry's at 5. Cook is at 5. Henry's at... Dalvin Cook is at 4. Henry's at 5. Kamara at 6. Harris at 7. Aaron Jones at 8. Joe Mixon 9. DeAndre Swift at 10. There we go. So that's my top 10. I think in terms of in terms of the cutoff for that's my top 10. I mean, when you ask cutoff, what are you specifically asking for?
Where does it drop? Because for me, I would say that tier 1 by itself is Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, and then it's a drop where I think that those are the two favorites to lead the league in scrimmage yards. Those are the two guys with the most upside. Then I would have Eckler kind of in his own tier at number 3, where I think he's the clear number 3. And then, we differ on Derrick Henry.
Yes, we do.
Also, we differ a little bit on Dalvin Cook. I would actually have Alvin Kamara at 4, but he would be in a similar tier with those guys like Cook, like Henry. Do you agree with that? Would you tier
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Taylor and McCaffrey in their own sort of tier. I agree with you, Eckler on a second tier. I think, Cook, Henry, Kamara, probably in an. I would still see. Cook, Henry, Kamara are a cut above Harris, Jones, Mixon, Swift. To me, is how I would
less
put it
exciting.
There. Less exciting. There's a little bit more risk. There's a little more injury risk with Cook, Henry, and Kamara than there is with some of the other guys. And then you get into further down. And then by the way, then the next tier is, just by my rankings, Fournette, Barkley, James Conner, Javonte Williams.
Yeah,
right?
I think Barkley and Williams are the two guys who have the most upside to really vault into the next tier. So a couple days ago, we talked about zero RB, which is growing in popularity as a strategy this year with what's on the board.
And we should explain that. And by the way, Denny Carter at NBCSportsEdge.com,
kind of staked his name on it.
He's kind of planted his flag there. But highly recommend going to NBC Sports Edge and checking out Denny's stuff if you're interested in zero RB. But in essence, zero RB for people that are uninitiated or haven't ever tried it. It doesn't mean you don't draft running backs. It merely means that you do not draft a premium running back. That the first 5 or 6 rounds you are loading up on elite wide receivers, elite tight ends, maybe even elite quarterback. The idea is that you're going to crush on a weekly basis. You're going head to head. You're like, I'm going to beat you at wide receiver. I'm going to beat you at tight end. I'm going to beat you at quarterback. And then with running back, because there's so much volatility at the position between injuries, between committees, we know that there'll be guys that emerge. I'm going to be able to sift through that rubble to find this year's Cordero Patterson, this year's Devontae Freeman, who again was a top 16 running back for about 4 weeks last year. There are guys throughout the season. There will always be guys like that. Darrell Williams, had a run there where he was highly productive. So you'll find those kind of pockets, if you will. That's the idea behind zero RB. It is something that you cannot. You can't half-ass it. Yeah, right, I was trying to think of a different word, but whatever. It's happy hour. You can't half-ass that. Like you have to that's a strategy that you need to sort of okay, if you're doing that, you have to do it because you've got to nail the other positions.
Yep.
Right, and then by the way, not only is it like drafting high upside and potential running backs, in the mid to later rounds, but you're going to have to know yourself. Like, are you somebody that's going to be scouring the waiver wire, or are you somebody that's sort of oh man, I forgot to put in my picks this week?
Yeah, so would you do it this year with what's on the board?
I think you can this year because of the way the sort of the strategy is going. Like, there are guys that are going later, like Dameon Pierce is going, higher than, he's raising
getting a bit out of control with that.
But I think the Ramondre Stevensons, the Rashad Pennys, the Chase Edmonds of the world. So, I think there are guys, that you could potentially get. And there are running backs that are going much later. Michael Carter, James Robinson, for example, Darrell Henderson going super late, right? I mean, we'd mentioned Nyheim Hines in the first segment. I think it is not a strategy that I've employed a lot, but when the draft falls to me that way, like if I'm sitting there in the first round and all of a sudden, Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson has fallen to me at the end of the first round, and then I come back around and Adams is still there, Chase is still there, I don't mind it.
I think it's something where you should let the draft dictate whether you go to that. Where if you have a chance to have your two running backs are Austin Eckler and Alvin Kamara, and the draft just breaks that way and you can get them at value, then I don't think that's something you should turn away from because of this commitment to this philosophical ideal, the zero RB. The next question is, are you avoiding the running back dead zone in about rounds 4 through 7?
Yeah, 1,000%. And that's one of the reasons why to do zero RB. If you don't get at least one elite running back in the first 2 rounds, then I would immediately go to zero RB, because what's happening is these guys, and this is the running back dead zone here, and this is basically Yahoo ADP from 40 to 70 overall. So Cam Akers, Elijah Mitchell, Breece Hall, David Montgomery, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Damian Harris.
I like A.J. Dillon.
I like it. Of this list, I like A.J. Dillon. Dobbins, I used to like Dobbins. We talked about him last week, but the signing of Kenyon Drake makes me a little concerned. I think Elijah Mitchell could be all right, because when Shanahan commits to one guy, and I don't think Elijah Mitchell did anything last year to lose the job, it's just health with him. Etienne, I do think, has some potential upside. Akers has the talent, but I think that's going to be a committee. And so, Etienne I don't mind. A.J. Dillon I really like. Potentially Gibson, with the unfortunate news around Brian Robinson. Gibson may fall into a much more of an every down role than was expected. But other than that, I hate all these running backs, again, at their current ADP. I would much rather go with a wide receiver at that position. We'll talk about wide receiver coming up in the next segment. But the idea here is that if I don't get an elite running back in the first 2 rounds, and then I'm picking as my running back 1 through that list, those are all guys that I would want as flex plays, not as a number 1 or even as a number 2. And so Montgomery, we don't know if Khalil Herbert is healthy. Looks like that's going to be a committee on a bad team. So I am absolutely avoiding the running back dead zone unless I can get one of those guys as a flex. Like I said, I like Etienne as a flex if you can get him.
Yeah, a lot of names
and there. And A.J. Dillon I love as a flex. Yeah.
A lot of names there where very questionable ceiling and then also a floor that could really just fall out, where I'd much rather have names like Rashad Penny and Devin Singletary and Ramondre Stevenson, who you're getting later and who have the upside to be better than all of those guys if some things break their way. Now, speaking
1,000%. So that is just to underscore this, that is a scenario where absolutely, if you find yourself, you went Jamar Chase in the first, and then you decided to go Andrews or Kelsey in the second, and then you found yourself and you're just like, oh, well, I can't, whatever. Tyreek Hill is still there in the third. All right, fine, I'll do Tyreek. You know what I mean? And then you just find yourself, now you're in round 4 and you're like, your best available is like Breece Hall or Dave Montgomery.
Don't feel compelled
Josh Jacobs,
to take Josh Jacobs because you need a running back.
Yeah, don't do this. Don't do that, right? That's the Dwayne McFarland tweet. This is what dancing version of drafting Josh Jacobs. Don't do this.
Wondering what you're going for there with the little kind of kangaroo punches.
Well, no. I feel like kangaroos are like this.
Yeah, with the gloves.
This is the old guy in the video that Dwayne tweeted.
Yeah, with the moves.
Kangaroo, old guy.
Good distinction. Okay. Next question. What do you look for in late round running back targets? And then tied to that, where do you stand philosophically on insurance backs?
So let's answer the second question first. Philosophically, I'm in on insurance backs. Okay. Again, you've invested so much in that first round pick, whether it's Dalvin Cook. Now, there's not a lot of insurance backs. No. You have to know, hey, 2 things to draft an insurance back. You need to know, number 1 is who it's going to be, and number 2, that they're going to be productive if and when they get the role. Alexander Mattison, perfect example. Tony Pollard behind Ezekiel Elliott, perfect example. Mark Ingram behind Alvin Kamara. He's had a strong preseason, and we've seen him, produce in that role before.
Yep.
If Najee Harris goes down, is it Benny Snell? Sorry, Benny. As far as I know, Benny has no odor. I just want to be clear about that. I've never been close enough to Benny to get a whiff. To get a whiff to understand.
We call him Benny Smell.
Benny Smell if he tanks. I'm sorry, Benny. Anyway, Benny Snell, unintentional slip of the tongue. Well, he's a big guy. I don't think kids call. Like, I could see if he was a little kid.
Why do you hate Benny Snell?
I know. Poor Benny Snell. Anyway, we don't know if it's Jaylen Warren or Benny Snell. We think it's Benny Snell. We don't know if Benny Snell would be that productive, as it might be more of a committee there. So
there are certain guys where if you go all in on Christian McCaffrey and he gets injured, then you're just screwed. Anyway, you don't need to take insurance out. I do think Deontay Foreman. I mean, they have Chuba Hubbard there too. I do think Deontay Foreman, who produced last year, would be my. But yes, correct. James Conner goes down. Is it Darrell Williams? Is it Benjamin? We don't know, and we don't know if those players would be. So the point is, for an insurance back, you need to know it will absolutely be that person, and given that role, that person will be successful. Now, what do I look for in late round running back targets? This is sort of what we talked about in the first segment, right? We look for a couple things. Number one, you look for pass catching ability, because then they might be usable in a flex week if you're stuck, if you've got a lot of injuries, bye week, what have you. Because then if they have a pass catching ability, they have a way to get on the field, even if the starter, quote unquote, is healthy and doing well. But the other thing I look for is there a path to playing time? You sort of look about every player and you're like, okay, what's the scenario in which this player has fantasy value other than just everyone else around him gets injured or is out with COVID or what have you, and he suddenly gets insane volume. So you think about, and Kareem Hunt's Kareem Hunt's not a late round running back, but like Nick Chubb goes out, there's an opportunity there. Yep.
Zamir White. Think about Zamir White, who has the ability to be a 3-down back. We know Amir Abdullah does not. Josh Jacobs was not drafted by this current regime. We've seen the Raiders already make a lot of moves, getting rid of some of the early round picks of the previous regime.
Yep.
And so Jacobs, who didn't have his fifth year option picked up, you could see a scenario where the Raiders go, Josh McDaniels says, we think Zamir White is better. Let's give him a shot, right?
Herbert.
Khalil Herbert. Same thing, right, with David Montgomery. It's just, if something happens to Montgomery, Herbert would be the guy. And we saw that last year, right? When Herbert got 2 different games as the starter for the Bears. He averaged 18.8 fantasy points per game. He had at least 18 rushing attempts in both starts, over 122 yards from scrimmage in those games. So Jamal Williams, we talked about this. The Lions, for all the challenges the Lions have, they actually have a pretty good offensive line. And we know that if DeAndre Swift went down, Jamal Williams, who has been productive in his career, would be the guy. So Jamal Williams is an interesting guy there. Again, so that's what you're looking for is Tyler Algier in Atlanta. He's got a over 30-year-old converted wide receiver as the starting running back ahead of him. So it's looking at situations. And by the way, coming out tomorrow will be my 10 list of 10. I'm a company man, another plug. And one of the 10 lists will be late round running back targets. So you can check that out, and you can always look at my rankings, all available for free on NBCSportsEdge.com. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.